Right, so today's lesson we are looking at the reflex action. So this carries on from where we were last lesson, where we were looking at how the nervous system responds to stimuli that are around it. So we finished off the lesson by looking at this process here. So he said that everything that you respond to starts off with a stimulus. That stimulus could be light, it could be sound, and that is detected by your receptors. So your receptors are the cones and rods in your eyes, the cells in the cochlea in your ears, pressure receptors, temperature receptors in your skin. They are all what we refer to as energy transducers. So they convert the energy that comes in, the light energy, the sound energy, kinetic energy, into electrical energy. That passes as an electrical impulse along a sensory neuron to the coordinator. Now, the coordinator is the central nervous system, the brain or the spinal cord. That then decides what to do about that particular stimulus, and then it sends an electrical impulse along a motor neuron to an effector. The effectors are either muscles or glands, and then you carry out a response. So if we have a look at some examples of these, just to remind ourselves. So here it is, stimulus, receptor, sensory neuron. Now this one's got synapse in there. Remember, the synapses are found in the central nervous system. Relay neuron, motor neuron response. So Jane woke up. She got out of bed. She went to the window, drew back the curtains as the bright sunshine streamed in through the window. It hit the light-sensitive cells in the back of her eye. This immediately caused the muscles around her pupil to contract, making her pupil smaller and letting less light into the eye. So the stimulus was the bright light. Okay, the receptor, the light sensitive cells, the sensory neuron, same thing both times, synapse, relay neuron, motor neuron, and her response was that her pupils shrink. So let's have one that is not quite complete. So when Bradley was walking home after school, he suddenly heard a loud bang as a low-flying aircraft flew over him. He instinctively pulled his arms over his head to protect himself. So what was the stimulus? Well, that was the sound of the plane. What was that detected by? The receptors in the ear. And again, it goes on the sensory neurons, like the synapses, the relay neuron, the motor neuron. And what was his response? He puts his arms over his head. So Sarah was putting a hot tray out of the oven when her hand touched the tray. She immediately drew her hand away and dropped the tray. So what was the stimulus? That was the hot temperatures on the tray. That was detected by the cells in her skin, passed along a sensory neuron, which synapse is, with a relay neuron, sends a message along a motor neuron, and her hand is pulled away from the tray. Okay, so that was a recap of what we did last lesson. And all of those things are all responses that we carry out every day to various different things. But sometimes what happens is we have to carry out what we call a reflex action. So in your books, if you haven't already put the word reflex action as a title, please do. And then you will either need to write these as I talk about them, or you will need to pause the video and copy them into your books. So some of your responses are so fast they happen without giving you time to think. And these are what we call our reflex actions. So these are ones that are there mainly to protect us. And as I said, they happen without us thinking. They are automatic responses. You don't choose to do them. So I'm going to talk about your pupil reflex. So when you go from light to dark or dark to light, your pupil changes size. So if you go out in the bright sun, your pupil gets smaller. Now this is not your pupil is just a hole. It's actually your iris that's changing size, and that has an impact on the size of the pupil. So you don't think about that. You don't think, oh, I'm going outside where it's light, I must make my iris bigger and my pupil smaller. Okay, it just happens. If something comes too close to your eye and you blink, you don't think about that, you just do it. Okay. Now this is key. This is what the examiners are always looking for in your exam. What don't they do? They do not go through the conscious part of the brain. So you have a conscious part of the brain part of the brain that is listening to me intently now. It's the bit that makes you pick up your pencil, speak to your parents, decide what to watch on television. All of those things are happening in the conscious part of your brain. Then we have what we call the unconscious part of your brain. And in that part of your brain is where these reflex actions happen. Okay? So they don't go through the conscious part of the brain, they go through the unconscious part of the brain. They're very important for us, and they're very important because basically they help us avoid danger or harm. So they're there to protect us. So blinking, if something comes too close to the eye, changing the size of your iris, so your pupil changes size, stops damage being done to your damage being done to your eye by light. Okay, ducking if you hear a loud noise, protect you. So all of these things are there for safety purposes. And they follow, as it says, this structure. So they go receptor, sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, effector. Same as before, but all this path is sort of pre-programmed. So it's an automatic response through the unconscious part of your brain, and it's pre-programmed into your brain. Now, sometimes the relay neuron, it doesn't exist, it's not there. Sometimes it's just receptor, sensory neuron, motor neuron, effector. And that means that you cannot override this reflex arc. You cannot change it. You cannot alter it in any way. It just happens automatically, very quickly, and is there to protect you. Now, the reflex action, we're going to look in a moment at a diagram that's showing a section through a spinal cord. They don't always go through the spinal cord, they just go through whichever part of the central nervous system is closest. So your eye ones will go to your brain. Your ear ones will also go to your brain. If you stub your toe and you start hopping about on one foot, that's gone through your spinal cord because it's the part of the central nervous system that is closest. Okay. Right, this video, hopefully, will explain a little bit.
There are some actions that you perform without even thinking. These are called reflex actions. A well-known reflex action is the knee jerk. Hit the knee in a particular spot and you can't help lifting your lower leg. So what's actually happening? First, stretch sensors in the muscle detect a sudden change. A nervous impulse travels along a nerve to the spinal cord. It passes through the spine, back down the leg, and causes the muscle to contract. Electrodes on the thigh pick up any electrical activity. Scientists use the trace on the oscilloscope to work out the speed of the response. It takes just 1/30th of a second. The pathway taken by a nervous impulse during a reflex action is called a reflex arc. The impulse travels in an arc through the spinal cord. It bypasses the brain, which means you don't even think about it. Reflex actions happen so quickly because they travel by the shortest route.
Okay, so as I said, don't always just get hooked up the fact they go through the spinal cord. Some do go through the brain, but they are there. They travel through the shortest route, so they happen very quickly. Okay? Right, so you should have access to a sheet that has got this diagram on it. So this diagram is a section through the spinal cord. And it's quite a complicated diagram to try and get your head around. What you have to imagine is that if you imagine somebody led on a desk in front of you, sort of like, on their front with their heads towards you. You then saw them in half, remove the top half of their torso, put that aside for later, and you're looking down onto their spinal cord, and this is what you would see. So this area here, this represents almost like the bone, the actual vertebrae that are in the spine. And then what we have is our spinal cord, and coming from our spinal cord are various sections of tissue. These are actually nerves. Remember we talked about how a nerve is a collection of neurons. So we're going to label, first of all, this diagram. And we're going to label it with each of these parts. So this is pointing to our sensory neurone. So this sensory neurone is bringing in the electrical impulses from the receptors. So they are coming in here. This is our cell body that sticks up out of the cell, sorry, out of the axon, and then it comes into the main part of the spinal cord. Okay, where it synapses, and we'll label those in a minute, with a relay neurone. Now remember we talked about last lesson how we have lots of dendrites on the end of these cells. So it doesn't just synapse with one, it might synapse with some others, but in this picture we just got it synapsing with one. Then it synapses here with the motor neurone. So the motor neurone is taking the message of the electrical impulse to the effector. So this is the direction of the reflex arc. And as we've marked on here, these are our synapses. All right, so these are the gaps between two adjacent neurons. And then we've got, so it says draw actions onto the motor neuron and sensory neuron to the direction the electrical impulses flow. So we've got that here. So it goes in, through, and out. All right. So this is a section through a relay arc or relay action, reflex arc, sorry, or reflex action, going through the spinal cord. Could be through the brain, but 99 times out of 100 in an exam, it'll show you this particular cross section here. They can go in and out of this side as well, but for this diagram, we've just got one here. So now you've got a copy and well, you can copy and complete it if you want to print the sheet off, or you can just fill it on the sheet. We've got some words at the bottom. So I'm going to, I think what you should possibly do is pause the video and have a go at it. We are going to go through the answers now so that you can just fill those in if you wish to as well. So, an electrical, sorry, wrong button. Impulse passes from the sensory receptor, okay, e.g. the motor ending, along the sensory neuron to the spinal cord. The impulse then passes to a relay neuron and straight back along a motor neuron to the effector organ, e.g. the muscle. The time between the stimulus and the reflex action is as short as possible. It allows you to react to danger without thinking about it. Reflex arcs do not involve the conscious part of the brain. So that is what they are always talking about on exam papers, right? Where does the reflex arc go? It does not go to the conscious part of the brain. So that's it about reflex arcs. So what I would like you to do, there's a homework sheet attached to this lesson, which I would like to have a go at. This is just the first slide. There is a second side to it. So it does say that you could perhaps have a go at these activities. So if you can find a willing volunteer in your house to do these with, otherwise just have a think about them. They're fairly straightforward. Knee jerk. Ask subject to sit on a stool and cross their leg. Gently but firmly tap the subject just below the kneecap with the side of your hand. Observe the movement. All right, gently and firmly. So don't go and find your younger brother and sister and use it as an excuse to torture them. Okay, so we've got what is the stimulus and then what is the body's response. So for each of these four, so we've got the blink, the response to light, response to dark. Okay, I would like you to fill in what is the stimulus and what is the response. And then what is the importance to the body? Why do we carry these out? What are we trying to do? Remember, reflex arcs are all about danger and how to protect yourself and keep yourself safe. There is also a second side to this homework sheet, which I'd like you to have a go at, and then try and answer those questions. Okay, thank you very much.